For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious.
Violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups who are terrorizing the innocent, destroying jobs, hurting businesses, and burning down buildings. They are coming after me because I am fighting for you. That's what's happening.
Greetings, fellow thought criminals, and thank you for joining the insurrection. I'm Michael Lauber, and today I'm joined by Aisha Schreiner, host of Aisha Speaks Truth, and recently you became a published author. How you doing this morning?
Doing good, much better. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you. And for our audience, Aisha's currently getting over the plague, so if she's sneezing or anything else, try not to breathe anything in. You don't want to get sick, but hopefully you're recovering just fine. But yeah, I want to pull up your book here real quick, One Nation Under God, which you guys can get right now on Amazon and all booksellers. The 250th anniversary of American independence. And I think this is really a brilliant work. I was fortunate enough to be given a pre-release copy and able to read through, listen to it. And I really like what you did here. Like, this is a devotional. If you could kind of give the audience a quick rundown on this.
Yeah, so I'll tell you why I started it and then explain a little bit more about the book. So getting into politics, I discovered quickly that a lot of Americans are ignorant of the spiritual foundations of this nation. And then you constantly see within the media that there's just a greater push to, I want to say, devalue our desire to love this nation, or to just devalue the nation altogether. And you constantly see this push also in that devaluing, to make us a global member versus continue to make America a global leader, because we are very impactful. And I saw this constant attack on the nation that we call home. And while it's not perfect, no nation is, I decided to go through and look at all of our history from the founding 1776 to 2026, and I compiled this. And the reason why I did that is because I want us to be cognizant and understand the spiritual foundation, or just how the ideals of Christianity played such a major role, and biblical ideals played such a major role in the founding of this nation. And it was one of the most major texts, as you see, the Declaration of Independence and then the Constitution. And then also, my other goal is to make sure that not only do we fight for our faith, but we also fight for the love that we have for this country that we call home. And so that is what this is. So this brings you to an actual factual historical event from 1776 to 2026. And then with each entry, I paired it with a reflection, a prayer, and then a scripture for you to meditate on. So that way you can get all of the context of what it means to be basically a Christian in this nation, and also understand the historical foundation of it. And so this book is kind of like based, you can break it down in like 7 parts, from the founding and revolution all the way down to modern America. And I leave that in the book to how you could use this. The book is kind of brilliantly done because you can use this as a devotional, because that's kind of how it's set up. You could also use it as a historical resource, and you could also read it with your family. And I wanted to do something very special ahead of America 250 that brings the average American citizen to understand their historical foundation, how things were done, and then also allow you to see the providence of God over this nation. And I think when you see both of that, when you see all of our history, and then you see it from a different perspective, you have a greater love than you had before for this nation, because you can see how the things match up. What I like to say is, I've done this research, and read through tons of articles and books. I've came to a way to put this in an analogy for you. So you had the ideals that we started with at the very beginning, right? Our
Hmm.
Declaration of Independence that they risked their lives to sign in 1776. And then you have the reality. So you had people that wrote that men are created equal, right? And with certain unalienable rights. And then you have those ideals. But the reality is that not everyone was equal. Right. So now you have a clash between these two, or at least a gap in between the ideals and the reality
Yeah.
of the time. And so, what you constantly see as you read through history is this closing of the gap: civil rights, voting rights for women, voting rights for all, the land property, all these things brought together, that closing of the gap, so we live closer to the ideals that we set for the founding. Now, the founders might not have been perfect in living up to these principles, but you can see that these principles and these ideals were definitely based in Christianity, and the closer we got to them, the better the nation became. And
Yes.
so you see that this is worth celebrating how far we've come, our achievements, our failures, our setbacks. All of those things are worth celebrating. And the men and women who have achieved great things, or who risk their lives to do certain things to make this nation where it is. And so I think in this book, what you're going to find, because one question that I got asked is, how did you choose the historical event when some years have many different events that are pivotal? So what I did is I chose what I thought would be the most impactful event talking about American history. So some of the events, historical events, are things you heard of, and then there are some that you probably never knew even existed. So you'll find
Yes.
that in here. And then at the end, I left sources for you to also reference. What I wanted to do, because I bought books and resources to do this, but I wanted you to have free resources to look up any historical event that you wanted to, in case you wanted to dive a little bit deeper in it, because I kept the historical context as concise as I could, while also giving you enough information to understand what's taking place. So if you wanted to dig deeper into that historical event, you would basically just go to the source, and then you can find that. And these are legit sources like history.com, Library of the Congress, National Archives. So
Yeah.
it's all online and it's public.
Yeah, and what I really like about how you did this, and again, guys, make sure you go pick this up. One Nation Under God, the 250th anniversary of American independence. What I really like about how this is, like, you do a great job providing the original event, what happened, but your perspective and the context that you provide, and the guidance that you provide afterward, I think is like the best part. And then
Thanks.
the Bible verse, and then the reflection is great too. But some of these are pretty obvious. Stories that we've all heard before: Russian crossing the Delaware, other miracles that took place during our country's founding. However, you pick a lot of other events that people are either going to not likely be familiar with, or there are some in there even I wasn't familiar with. But again, the context is great, and it all pushes towards the same direction, and that's living up to our values as one nation under God, striving to achieve that, and all the steps along the way on that journey. And that's what really makes this such a beautiful work. So, guys, again, if you want to get your family excited about American history again,
Yeah.
like I always say, pick up 2 copies of this, have one for yourself there. And because these are in short segments, this is something that you could go over with your family every night in the evening, or maybe even as part of like a prayer before dinner. But get a copy for as a loaner too, because you're going to loan it to somebody and they're not going to give it back. So that way you don't lose it, and that way you can help educate other people around you, encourage them to do the same. And hey, if you enjoyed this book, grab another copy. Look, give it to somebody else. Because again, these are the kind of values and the mindset that we really do need to reinstill in America. It isn't to say like
Yes.
nobody has it now, but it isn't as pervasive as it used to be, and it needs to be much more common. We need to reignite that love for country, because, as you just said, the left has done their best to destroy that, to either
Yeah.
only focus on the negative, or with a lot of like the 1619 project, bring in stuff that's just absolute nonsense, to create a narrative, a fiction, to further divide the country. And again, it's just fine to admit that there are faults in our past, but we also have to acknowledge that in a lot of cases we've bettered ourselves and gotten past that. Like you said,
Yeah.
you initially all men were not were not treated as if they were created equal. And then and over time, we ended slavery. We have the Voting Rights Act, women's right to vote. We moved closer and closer to the goal of our founding. And I think, again, this is a great job illustrating that, and also just highlighting other stories that really show you why America is what it is and why we are that beacon of light and freedom to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and so you can get it on Amazon. It is now 40% off until July 4th because I want everyone to get their hands on it. I want you to be encouraged during this time as we celebrate it. I want you, if you feel the challenge that I have two. If you feel that you are very patriotic about this nation, you love this nation, pick up a copy. It'll make you even more. As you
Yes.
go through all the history from 1776 to where we're living right now, and you get to see it from a different picture. And then what I also looked at is if you start reading, because it's like a page per year, is what I tried to keep it. Some entries a little longer than others, but it's basically a page per year. So if you started reading today, for example, you read 24 entries, short entries a day, you should finish by July 4th.
That's awesome. Well, again, make sure you guys pick it up. And again, it's up there on Amazon. You said 40% off through the 4th of July. So you know what? Order it today. That way you've got it before July 4th gets here. In most places, you'll probably have it by tomorrow from Amazon, but you'll definitely have it before July 4th that way. But let's go ahead and get into it. And we're going to fly through some of these slides today because a lot of them, as you guys might recognize, like we ran this the other day, but it's all going to build to the same point that we're at. Because we got some major court wins yesterday, but also the left is completely unhinged, and we've got to do something about these other rogue judges. But Supreme Court sides with Trump administration in a major 6-3 immigration win, makes it easier to deport criminal green card holders accused of crimes involving moral turpitude. Whoops, and we also have this. Sorry, my computer's not cooperating. There we go. Federal appeals court bats down Biden judge, sides with Trump, says ICE can resume swift deportations. And Victory, DHS praises SCOTUS decision as big win against activist judges attempting to thwart Trump's immigration agenda. And as we'll cover here in a second, the left is just freaking out. But, you know, when I, especially reading through the dissent from Sotomayor, like this is the problem. Like the left bases their opinions on their feelings, not on the law that we have or what's best for the country. Obviously, we've had immigration enforcement prior to Trump winning elected office. It's never been that controversial. Yes, we've had pushes for amnesty in the past, and previously, unfortunately, you know, like Reagan made a deal with the Democrats to allow some mass amnesty, and then, of course, they never followed through with their part of the deal, building a effective border wall and setting a policy in place for for easier deportations for people that crossed afterwards. This is what always happens. Trump's actually turning this around. We are conducting deportations now, but these decisions have also cleared the way for mass deportations. And to get back to what I said about Sotomayor and her dissent in one of these cases, you know, she said, oh, well, this has specifically to do with the temporary protected status. Because, you know, as we've said before, like this was never administered as the law intended or legally. Same with paroling people in the country. That's supposed to be for someone that's here illegally, that is witness to a crime, that needs temporary protected status until they can testify, either because they were the victim or they were a key witness. And previously, when this has happened, they literally have somebody from Immigration and Customs Enforcement at the courtroom. So once they are done testifying, they are taken to the airport and then flown out of the country. Again, you know, they're not abused, they're not mistreated, they're not imprisoned or anything like that. But this is the agreement. We let you in here, stay here past your visa temporarily, so you could serve a purpose in our court system. But then you're gone. But this law was instead being abused and applied to anybody that said the magic words at the border was paroled into the country, not for a future court date or anything like that. Just you know, forever. But this is a huge win. Sotomayor said, oh, you know, like when you fly into Dulles, the D.C. airport, you're not actually flying into D.C., you're flying into Virginia. For those of you who didn't know, Dulles is not in D.C. It's right outside of D.C. in Virginia. But the pilot, when they get on the intercom, they welcome you to D.C. Well, first of all, the pilot doesn't exactly have legal authority for anything, and they're just welcome. You know, most people are flying in to go to D.C. And I'm going to have to check this next time I fly in and out of Cincinnati. For those of you that don't know, Cincinnati's airport is actually in Kentucky. I have to pay attention and see if they welcome me into Kentucky or welcome me into Cincinnati when I fly in there. But, it's not because there's legal power vested in the pilot of the airplane. They just know that you're flying in to the city you think you're flying into, even if you're slightly outside. Dayton's airport isn't in Dayton either. It's in Vandalia. Nobody cares about that. It's a suburb right outside of the city. But same thing, they welcome you back to Dayton International Airport, not to the city of Vandalia.
I'm looking at this court ruling. It was actually ending TPS statuses for the Haitians and the Syrians. And it
Yes.
says 350,000 Haitians will be affected, 6,000 Syrians. Now, I love something Marco Rubio said, and I think we need to come back to this, is that it is a privilege to be here. So when you
Yeah.
have these statuses to protect you, and you're, they says committing types of crimes while you are here, then yeah, I think that's ground for you to be deported. And I'm really happy for the Supreme Court ruling, because we have to protect our nation. We have to protect the borders. We have to protect our interests abroad, and we have to protect ourselves here inside of this nation.
Yeah. And I guess my big thing on this is too, especially with that temporary protected status with those two groups in particular, a lot of these Syrians have been here 10 plus years. If you haven't assimilated or decided to become an American citizen, it's time to go. You
Yeah.
know, same with the Haitians. A lot of the temporary protected status for Haitians goes back 20 years. This isn't just the 20,000 that are here in Springfield illegally right now. We're going to discuss that more here coming up too, because that's actually, let's go ahead and bring it up, because that's the big freak out. Democrat freak out over Haiti TPS ruling. American families losing temporary amnesty after 20 years. Pillars of our economy. Again, if you've been here 20 to 30 years, you still haven't assimilated, you still haven't decided that you and your family should become American citizens, then, we don't need you. And honestly, with a lot of these groups that they're talking about specifically, you have exorbitant rates of welfare and fraud going on still.
Yeah.
And as with the Haitians near where I live up in Springfield, Ohio, where they eat the cats and dogs, it's created huge other problems. When you drop 20,000 people into a city of 55,000, it changes everything. Crime's gone through the roof, especially like vehicle and automotive crime, accidents, people fleeing the scene from them. But it's also depressed wages, because there is this whole thing that goes on, we've talked about it before, where they launder people through staffing companies, use that as a way to bypass rules for e-verify compliance and other things that a lot of these larger employers have in order to get a discount on their work comp and other insurances. But if somebody works for the staffing company, they don't technically work for you. So the staffing company can go through, they can pay these, Haitian migrants, or other migrants for that matter, at, half to three quarters what they pay an American to do the same job. It costs the company less to have the illegal, they're doing it even with the markup from the staffing company. But that's depriving Americans of fair wages. And it's driving
And
that
it's
down.
also abusing the migrant.
Yeah, it's basically, in my opinion, it's modern day slavery.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is something that Trump has called out, even when we talk about the border.
Yeah,
You have to look at the fact that these children also were trafficked, and the fact that we don't even know where 300,000 plus of them were.
yeah,
Trump, at least their DOJ is doing something about it. But these are the things we have to consider when we're talking about our borders, and we're talking about these people on TPS statuses. And I don't think this is anything. I know the left will try to swing this as a something racial or something
of course.
inhumane along those lines. But you have to look at more than just this on the surface, and look at the intricacies of what's taking place. And I
Yeah,
think when we're talking about having our nation be America first, when we're talking about what we're seeing is that this demoralization continuing to take place in different sectors, because again, you have workers being abused, you have these migrants being abused, you have
yeah,
our houses and stuff being bought, and then we have inflation going up because of all of these migrants that have come in. And what I saw under Biden is that a lot of them were given TPS or given houses and things like that. And the sad thing is they're given all of these benefits. Well, my concern
mm-hmm,
is that they're given all these benefits that they themselves rely on. I feel really bad. This is again the migrant being taken advantage of. So I
yeah,
feel bad for them in the sense that they came here, the government allow them to have these benefits as an American citizen when all that can be stripped away if another president got elected because they're not
Mhm.
secure. So not only are we looking at, we're saying, migrant has to take accountability for their actions, but we have to also look at the policies of the previous administration and see what that allowed and what it encouraged them to do.
Yes. Now, one thing I heard this morning is kind of getting added to this discussion now, too, and I'm glad people are finally saying it. And it's because Tom Holman put a tweet out, I don't remember if this was last night or early this morning, basically saying, hey, you know what? Now that the way is cleared, we are going to start moving in and doing mass deportations in a lot of these cities that people were clustered into. And there's still the CBP Home app. You can get on there, get the $2,600 to help cover your airfare as long as you book your flight for the next 30 days and self-deport. And then you don't have all the consequences or have to worry about getting arrested, rounded up, put on a list where you and your family can't re-enter the country for a period of time. So, people should be taking advantage of that. But what came from that conversation, I really like, and I think we should be doing this, is suing a lot of these NGOs like Catholic Social Services and HIWAS, the Hebrew Immigration. I always forget what the last two letters stand for, but these ones that took literally billions of dollars from the U.S. government under Biden to move illegals all over the country. We also need to be looking into, as Terry Newsom's pointed out numerous times on his program, there was a lot of fraud and corruption that went on with the other money that was getting just doled out while Biden was in office. Everything from contracts given to cronies to money that just straight up vanished for things like meals and housing and other stuff. So there needs to be some accountability there. I think at the very least, these charities that were busing people all over the country should have their tax exempt status stripped. I do think we should sue for return of this money because a lot of this, they were being paid to violate U.S. law. Now, whether it was the government doing that or not, there has to be some accountability there. And, some of these groups, Catholic Social Services, I don't even know what the grand total is. Like, they keep finding more avenues that money was laundered to these places, either through NGOs or direct from the government. Same with HIWAS. Like, it's ridiculous, the amount of money that was spent. I know there was one thing in particular we covered a couple years ago that was just busing people around the country. In 1 year, it was like $4.5 billion that they were given just to move people, groups of illegals around the country. And HIWAS was the group, by the way, too, that when they were investigated by Muckraker, we found that they were taking people and having them register to vote in multiple states along their journey from point A to point B. And of course, these addresses were, for centers that they controlled. So the theory was that they would then get these mail-in ballots and then vote for them. But there has to be actual accountability in all this. Like the deportations are a good first step, but there needs to be accountability too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen, or if you might have seen that James O'Keefe documentary from 2024. It
Yeah.
exposed like the border crisis. Yeah, that's a wake up call to see that. I think it's called Line in the Sand.
Yeah.
That one was really good because he exposed those NGOs, some of the NGOs that were helping these migrants to get into the country and then also taking advantage of them. You saw
Oh, yeah.
nonprofits that should have not been charging these people, charging them $600 a night just to stay there. And that's what he documented as well when one of the women exposed that how much she was paying to be there when it was supposed to be free.
Wow.
So there's a lot of extortion involved in
Yeah.
this, and yeah, all of that stops. And I think that's why you're going to see a hard push against it because it's ending the corruption too.
Yeah. Yeah. And something has to be done. We can't just sweep this under the rug. This whole idea that, we can leave the border open, that Biden can ignore the rules, the law of the land and the rules for 4 years, and then we just have to deal with it. No, that's not how it works. We have to have actual enforcement. We've seen these just lunatic activist judges, and something needs to be done. Congress, I'm looking at you. You guys actually have the power to impeach and remove these judges, and that needs to be done. I mean, there's some that are repeat offenders that continue to, again, exceed their power and authority and impose national injunctions. And I'm going to actually bring that up with this one, too, because the Supreme Court has already struck this down. And that's why you're seeing less of these activists. Well, right now you're seeing a rash of them again. But over the last few months, that's why you've seen less, because the Supreme Court told the lower courts that your rulings can only apply to the individuals that are standing before you that say that they are somehow aggrieved in the situation. And that would at least limit the effect. But this is the problem. Obama judge strikes down Trump order for voter ID in U.S. elections. Says not necessary because widespread fraud in the U.S. elections does not exist. And again, they limit what we're allowed to enter. And there are numerous stories right now out in the news about voter fraud being exposed. There's several cases up in Michigan. You just had a conviction of in Hamtramck of somebody that was stuffing ballots in the box. In New York, you just had a case where somebody was caught on camera destroying ballots before an election. Yeah, and we have obviously everything that just went down in California where they're currently investigating. Let's not forget the FBI is getting ready to come out with reports from Georgia, Michigan, and Arizona about 2020 and 2022. And I know that there's going to be more there to follow. We're also expecting, we got a taste of it yesterday, and we'll get more to this later, but information coming out on Dominion voting systems specifically and electronic voting and now captured fraud. Guess what, guys? There's not enough ballots to justify the vote total in multiple states, Fulton County, Georgia, and other places. And it's because elections were manipulated through the machines and through the mail-in vote in different states. But we're about to see more there. But again, you cannot have one judge blocking, pretending to be more powerful than the president. Now, part of this case was about a very small number of people that were removed from the voter rolls that should not have been, that were U.S. citizens, but they were also immediately put back on once the error was detected. You can't expect perfection, but this judge says, well, if it happens at all, then we have to strike the law, and you just shouldn't have to prove that you're a citizen. And unfortunately, our governor, or useless governor here in Ohio, he also just vetoed a law for voter ID in Ohio. So hopefully, we bring back witch burnings here and we got to solve that problem ourselves here in Ohio.
Well, the funny thing is, Byron Donalds pointed out that with the Obama Center, in order to get into that newly opened center in Chicago, you had to have an ID. And if you have an ID for something like that, why wouldn't you have an ID when it comes to voting? When it comes to our elections, which is pivotal for our nation and the direction it goes. And even though it may not be reportedly widespread, you do see cases popping up. And I remember I had to pull this one up because I remember one in Michigan, Hamtramck, Michigan. We had 2 city council members who were charged in 2025 with felony election fraud. They literally had them on video.
Multiple times dumping ballots in there. Yeah, how can Obama disenfranchise all the blacks that live in the south side of Chicago by forcing them to have an ID to enter the Obama Center? I mean, I don't know about you, but I have never met one black person in my entire life that doesn't know how to get an ID. That is the most condescending thing.
I don't know any black person that doesn't have an ID. We were all, I remember growing up, and we didn't have much. But growing up, we were all super excited to get our permit and get our driver's license and be ready and be able to get on the road. So I don't know one that doesn't have that either, unless they did something where they got it taken away.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it's a ridiculous, just racist argument to continue to make. Again, I don't know anybody that doesn't know how to get an ID. You have to have an ID to fly anywhere, to go into a government building, to buy alcohol or cigarettes, or even get in a lot of places. Yeah, to drive. And in a lot of states like Ohio, if you're over the age of 18, you are legally required to carry an ID with you if you're out in public. Now, again, that's not something that's generally enforced. You're not very you're not very likely if you bump into a cop and they ask for ID and you don't have it on you. It's not too likely they're going to give you a ticket unless they suspect something else is going on. But it is, the law is in place for a reason, so they can verify who you are when you're out in public, especially if somebody's going to go out there and do something stupid. But
most Americans agree with the Save America Act. I think it's over 52% agree with this.
85%. 85% want the SAVE Act passed. It's one of the few things that's gone up in support, not down, over the last 3 months. Wow. I mean, it's just crazy that this is where we're at. But we also have this. Biden appointed judge blocks ICE from making arrests at immigration courts. This goes back to the whole sanctuary state policy. Again, I think we just have to start ignoring it. You don't get to say we're a sanctuary state and we're just going to ignore federal law. There are things that they can do, like refusing to cooperate, which are legal, unfortunately. But, if your police departments are not going to hand over violent felons because they also happen to be illegal aliens in desperate need of deportation, I don't know how you prevent ICE from scooping people up at courts. It's a public building. They're allowed to be there. Now, again, they've already said they're going to fight this ruling. But once again, how is this judge issuing an edict nationwide and determining, how we're able to enforce the law? It's just, again, upside down and backwards, and that's why Congress needs to get rid of these people.
I totally agree with that. And you constantly see these rogue judges popping up, especially during the Trump administration, trying to block everything he set in place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is the immigration thing has been one of the huge ones. Which, again, when Trump ran, and you have 80 million, we're rounding up because it's like 78 million or something like that, but 80 million Americans voted for Trump, and his immigration policy was one of the major things.
Yes. Yeah, I think
So,
immigration policy, the economy, and justice. Those are the three things that brought people out to the polls. Is they wanted the deep state arrested and removed from office, and they wanted actual consequences for all these people that broke the law. That's the
yeah,
one area that the Trump administration is lacking on, as we've talked about on here numerous times. But with immigration, the reason I always say, we might not be getting 100% of what we want. Like, I would like to see mass deportation sooner, but a lot of that is because of the courts and the Democrats manipulating the
yes,
law and trying to slow things down. There are some things that we can complain about, but I think by and large, with immigration enforcement, they've done what they can, and they've done overall a good job. I would like
yeah,
that first year deportation number to have been like 5 million, but we can't always get what we want, and they are headed in the right direction, at least now. And I think just taking the chains off them, that the Supreme Court just did, is going to
yeah.
finally see some of these things kick into high gear. And I'm already hearing in our local news here that apparently, up in Springfield, Ohio, they're going to try to take a stand there, turn that into a battleground. I don't think they're going to get the same reception here that they got in Minnesota, guys. And if you attack people here in Ohio, they're allowed to defend themselves. So I don't think it's going to go the way you think it will. But I hope you show up, because the more of you we can put in jail for standing in the way, the better off the country will be. And as we've seen in Florida and more recently in Texas, if you're Antifa and you get stupid here, you're going to do hard time. And they're not going to let you out in 6 months with a slap on the wrist and $1,000 fine. Maybe it won't be 100 years in jail like they just gave him in Texas, but basically you're going to be
Wow,
planning for your retirement before you get out.
wow. I didn't know that I didn't know Antifa got 100 days in jail. Is what
100
you said?
years, 100
100
years.
years.
Yes, so
Wow.
this is the group in Texas that basically, and our media is out there saying, "Oh, well, this is just a noisy protest that got out of control." They had two separate groups. They had one that was there basically as a distraction, that was setting off fireworks and other things. And don't forget, they shot a police officer in the neck. They had
Okay.
people set up with
Wow.
guns and explosives. They were trying to kill as many police officers and ICE agents as they could. But luckily, these people are morons, and most of them were caught and arrested before more serious harm could be done. Luckily, the police officer that was shot in the neck did make a full recovery.
Thank
But
God.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's why you guys are doing a combined 450 years in jail. It isn't because it was a peaceful protest, it's because you tried to murder people. And that's,
Wow.
as much as you might not like it, that's still illegal here in the US.
Wow. I've just pulled up that story. It says 8 defendants were sentenced to prison terms ranging from 30 to 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm
Yeah,
glad. Well, I think this is great. This sets a precedent, because the thing is that it's one thing to follow the Constitution and exercise your First Amendment right, and then there's another thing when you become violent, or you start doing terroristic acts, or you start
yes.
attacking the police for doing their job, which is to maintain the peace. And we saw that with WLS, where we had protesters outside an all women's
Oh, yeah.
summit for Turning Point. And again, you can protest, but to come to a protest with your face half covered, like I mentioned, there's a difference, because I know some people might listen that are not, pro Trump or pro ICE, and then
Sure.
they might say, well, ICE is covering their face. Well, ICE name, that person's name is documented by the federal government. They know who those agents are. When you
Yeah.
have a protester who goes to a place and they have their face covers, you don't know who that person is. And that person is doing that because, I mean, you can only assume that they plan to do more than just exercise their First Amendment right. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what we saw at WLS. They were assaulting the police. They were getting violent and trying to enter into our hotel room where they were told they were not able to go.
That's incredible. Yeah. And again, this is why I've been saying from the beginning, we need to have more like real crackdowns on this kind of stuff from the Tesla terrorism on. I think if we had really put our foot down then, we wouldn't see things the way they are now. But a lot of the problem is, again, blue states, blue cities like Chicago and little Mogadishu up there in Minnesota, not enforcing the law. Or, even worse, like we've seen with, we had Right Side Rebel. I don't know if she wants her real name out there or not. We had her on recently talk about, she was physically assaulted in Portland multiple times, and the police won't do anything about it. Her friend, Katie Daviscourt, she was punched in the face, plain as day, and they wanted to initially charge her with a crime. It's upside down and backwards, but that's part of why things are so out of hand. So I think this does send the right message, having real enforcement. I know they're crying, well, 100 years in jail, that's a death sentence. Yeah, well, he did sort of shoot a cop in the neck, or
Yeah,
Zer, I don't know what
that
this
should be
person
punished.
identifies
Yeah.
as. Yeah, it's
This
attempted
has gone
murder.
on for way too long without any repercussions, any consequences, and I think this is a great step in the right direction. Now, what the left will try to frame this as if people that are protesting are being quelched, or they're being silenced, kind of like how Biden really did when he went after
Yeah.
conservatives, and they had names of conservatives in their database who did not do things like Antifa, but they
Hmm.
still targeted them and gave them
Yeah.
sentences that were harsh, and so it's a definitely stark contrast, but you can imagine that the left is going to paint this as an attack on them, when it's literally just enforcing the law and making sure we're upholding the Constitution.
Yeah. The other thing I've been saying about this is, guys, you were in Texas when you did this. This wasn't Chicago. I know it's going through federal courts, but you're still dealing with a Texas judge and a Texas jury, even though they're federal charges. And Texas is not going to screw around. Same with Florida. And you guys saw what happened down there. You had almost 30 people decide to play a speed bump in front of Alligator Alcatraz. Now they're looking at 20 plus years in jail because they're actually going to enforce the law. They're not going to be lenient. The judge is going to give you the maximum sentence because that is what the jury in these states is going to recommend. And part of that is because you're just so out of control all over the country. So I do sort of have some sympathy with that part of the argument from some of these people on the left, that it's because of the location. Well, it's not just because of the location. It's because you've been allowed to run wild throughout the rest of the country, and people actually want justice. Like, the laws are there for a
Yes.
reason. And they're there because most of the country understands it's not okay to shoot at police officers or plant explosives or interrupt people's daily activity, hold them hostage. So if you're in a red state, there's going to be repercussions when you do something stupid. So yeah, guys, come on here to Ohio. Let's see what happens. Let me go ahead and jump to our next segment because we're running low on time here. Democrats' communist revolution will destroy America if the right doesn't take it seriously. This is a great article, guys. It's up on the Liberty Daily. You guys should check it out. But I do agree with this because I do think there's a lot of people on our side that don't see this threat for what it is. That they're like, oh, well, this is the divide in the Democrat Party. Well, I don't think it is just the divide. I think this is the takeover that we're seeing because these are the Democrats that are getting funded right now. Otherwise, the DNC has, what is it, like $3 or $5 million cash on hand, where the RNC has over $100 million. And that's down too. And it's because of dissatisfaction with the voters. I don't disagree there. But this is the direction the Democrat Party is taking. A lot of the old school Democrats are basically gone or out the door. I mean, they literally showed up at a Hakeem Jeffries thing yesterday, I think yesterday or the day before, to go tell him he's next, that they want to remove him from office too and replace him with the next Democrat Socialist of America candidate. And here, I'll go ahead and pull the next headline too, then get your response. A DSA leader in New York City explains how they are just using the Democrat Party's infrastructure to get their people elected. He's exactly right. This is what we've been saying for a while, is these DSA candidates basically wear the Democrat Party as a skin suit, walk around in that, pretend to be Democrats until they gain power, and then they are going to change the party from the inside out and change the infrastructure, and this will become the National Democrat Socialist of America Party, even if it still says just plain Democrat on the front door.
I wish we had a clip of Speaker Mike Johnson talking about this very thing because,
Yeah.
Mike Johnson is a man of faith and he always talks about the outcome being up to God. But the recent press conference that he did, you can see that he was urging Americans to make sure you show up on the midterms, make sure that we understand the fight that we're in. And there is a real fight between the left and the right and between what we're going to uphold and what the future of America is going to look like.
Yeah.
And I do believe that there is an attack to make America a global member instead of keeping it a global leader. And you see that
Yes.
a lot with these communists, the things that they're saying and the defense that they have. And unfortunately, the Gen Zs, the next generation, not being as and I won't say that for all of them, but a lot of them are influenced by TikTok and
Yeah.
getting their information by TikTok. And so they hear like with charismatic people like or the charisma of, should I say, the charisma of Mondami, and they think
Yeah.
that, oh, he seems like a well-spoken man. He seems like Obama, right? But the policies that he's putting in play is not going to be policies that align with our ideals or take this nation to the next level. It will not. And we've
Yeah.
seen communist policies fail over and over again. When you look at China, that's why it's not wholly communist. We've seen this over and over again, repeated out through history.
Yeah.
And the constant notion we're seeing among the Gen Z is that they're being taught that capitalist society means that there's only a certain amount of people that can get ahead and the others are not, and that's not true. But that's the notion that's being put forward to them, and so they're not understanding. I think there's a group of them, maybe a majority of them, that aren't
Yeah.
understanding the fight that we're really in and why we as Americans even believe and hold to the things that we are currently doing and living, and why we even have a nation as great as we have it. And I think that's what the education come in this book. we have
Yes.
to we have to make sure we have that love for America, now we fight for it. And it's not necessarily just a Republican and Democrat thing. Unfortunately, that's how the lines have been split with the beliefs and the ideals. But we're talking about America as a whole, because I was just talking to my neighbor today. I was talking
Hmm.
to my neighbor today, and we were talking. They're a little older, but they were telling me, when Biden got elected, they are Trump supporters, but they're like, when Biden got elected, they weren't like in the streets protesting. They didn't like everything he did, but they understood that that's the president of the United States.
Yeah.
And so you can speak out about things you don't like, but ultimately you're still going to try to support the president, right? Because that's the president of the United States. And
Yeah.
what you see though is this difference in attitude. I think there was even a poll where it's like a high, like 90 or 80% of the Republicans love this nation, they said, and then like it was
Yeah.
like 39% or
95%.
lower. Yeah, 95%, big high number. But on the opposite end of that, the Democrats, it was much lower.
Yeah. It was about a
And
third,
if
I
that is
think.
how they feel about America and where it is, then imagine what they want to do and what they want to change. Like we're fighting for the Constitution, and a lot of the Democrats, like I believe how Kim Jeffries say, they're all talking the same way, but the
Of
way that the
course.
Democrat Party is leaning and who is actually taking over and leading it is very concerning.
Yes. Yeah. And you're exactly right. Like, the Democrats are driven by their hatred of America, and you're right. You keep saying they want us to be global citizens. I think this is
Yeah.
a big part of the problem, and why they have a lot of the views they do. But again, it's not realistic. We're already seeing the effects of that in Europe. I don't think we're going to quite have time to get to all that today. Though I'm going to bring one story to your attention before we wrap up. But you just had communists and Islamists voted in New York once again. And when you look at these people's background, like, sorry, I'm blanking on which one's which right now, but the one that went to Columbia, she is on the record saying that part of why she is seeking political power and her ultimate goals are to destroy and bring down the United States of America. So, and this person's headed to Congress. I agree with a lot. I watched a little bit of a podcast a few days ago, and they were saying, they ought to refuse to seat these people in Congress, because once you win
Yes.
the primary in New York, you're going on to Congress in these districts. Sorry, Republicans, it is a pipe dream that we are going to win any of those 3 seats. That is an impossibility in that city. So, or in that section of that city, it just is not going to happen. Especially not when, again, the number of votes they got in this primary ain't going to happen. So don't seat them. Because well, I don't even think we even have candidates running against all three, and that's another big problem with the Republican Party. We have to get in a fight. I'm gonna have a guest on next week that's running in Florida, and I think I just introduced you to her as well, Tedora Brown. But she's running in Florida 24th. This has been a Democrat district for 20 plus years. Um, but right now, with the redistricting and everything else that's gone on down there, this is an opportunity to change things. And the Republicans were not going to run anybody. She owned property down there and decided to go ahead and enter that race because even if we can't win, we have to at least have a showing. I mean, I think she can win, and we'll get more into that when we have her on. But we can't just give up and cede a lot of these elections, or you get stuff like this. You get the most radical radicals. Another one was part of this. What is it? Divest whatever anti-Israel movement and brought that in, and that's been part of her platform. This is where this is coming from. I don't understand how 80% of Jewish people in New York are still voting for Democrats. That is insane to me.
I don't understand that either.
Yeah, given the
Yeah.
slate of candidates. But when you have them like literally going out and campaigning with these Islamists, just like they did with Mamdani, like how do you get through to somebody like that? I just don't understand.
I think it's the way he's presenting the message, because that's one thing you had said too with the Trump administration. It's the messaging. And they're really good, even though their policies suck. You can look at Mondani, if you weren't ignorant, or if you weren't knowledgeable on how economics work, and you were just
Yeah,
listening to what he said, and he has a way with words and a way of presenting things that does seem like it's going to work. Like when he talked about the $12 billion deficit that he conquered in a day or something like that.
yeah, yeah. And it's the
No.
media going along with those lies too. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just not feasible. What you did is you got bailed out by the state, and what you did is kick the can down the road, which will affect the next generation.
Yeah,
And there's no way you conquer that debt and that quickly. It doesn't. It looks balanced on paper, but that's not the reality. And so people
bingo.
that don't know that or don't do the research, they will believe him at face value. And I think that's what it is his messaging and how he appeals. It was just like Obama. They
Yeah,
had this way of appealing to the pain points of people and sprinkling a little bit of policy on how that's going to change, but not really revealing the full thing or how the impact of that will be. And
yeah.
the one thing I loved about Trump is that even when he had, when he addressed Congress, and he had his, I think it was like the first congressional meeting that they had,
Mm-hmm.
he came with policies. He came with, not, this is what you guys are facing, da da da. He already knew that. That's why he brought his own policies in, and then we
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmingly voted for him. What he came in with is, this is what we've done. This is what we've done. We've done this. This is the policy. We've done that. And there's a stark contrast. If you were to go back and look at the addressing Congress, the Congress, that's what it is, a congressional address of
Yeah.
Obama and Biden versus Trump, there is a big difference. You see, Biden and Obama, they constantly go after you. You're the people who are facing this and facing that. They focus heavily on that, which I
It's the
think pulls at
platitudes.
people's, yes, it pulls at their emotions. It pulled and they did mention things that people were struggling with, so they were hitting reality. But then you hear a little bit about their policy and not much. Whereas Trump came in with, this is what we're doing, straight to
Yeah,
business. And I appreciate that about him, because like, we already know what we're facing. What are you doing about it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole hope and change thing. My policy can be anything that you imagine it is, as long as it's something that you want. It's these grand platitudes, and frankly, writing a lot of checks that their butts can't cash. And this is the end result of it. Like you said with Mandami, he stole from people's futures to balance the budget. It's the same thing
Yeah.
that's gone on in Chicago and Illinois for years. I keep talking about, right now they have $450 billion, billion with a B. I did not misspeak, and unfunded liabilities, because that's what they've stolen from the state pension fund, and that's getting ready to
Yes, the
come to a head.
pension fund. Yes.
Yeah,
You
there's
have
a
to
lot of
look
people.
into that, like, guys. You have to see what that would mean for the future of these people that live in that state, like in the
Hmm.
city. It's just not good for them in the future. And I so again, another stark contrast you see with Trump, and I bet this hasn't been reported widely in the media, but Trump even worked on a sovereign wealth fund, which we were the only nation. I think there's a couple of different nations that have it, but
There
this
are,
is
yeah.
setting Americans up way past his presidency. That if we were
Hmm.
to ever get into a place where we needed extra funds, or where our nation was collapsing, we could pull from that. So
Yeah,
these are things he set up in place, like, again, that's lasting past his presidency, that's going to be beneficial for the future.
yeah.
And you don't really see that with Mondami. It's like he's focused on the right here, right now, And that's the same thing Obama was. I believe Obama was just focused on what makes him look good right here, right now in his presidency, and not looking at the next president or the following one that's coming after him, whether they are Democrat or Republican. It's
Yeah,
very, very much a selfish mindset as a
yeah,
leader.
it's stealing from the future. I think that's the best way to put it. And unfortunately, I think a lot of these people, they don't care because, again, for the left, there was no truth but power. And once the check does come due, they'll just find a way to blame the other side for it.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, a lot of their cohorts in the media will just go along with that. And
Yeah.
that's again, what's really unfortunate. I think if we could make two changes, restrain the government back to the Constitution and have a media, a fourth estate that actually did its job and was critical and did report the facts and report the truth instead of
Yes.
just out there to be a mass distribution arm of propaganda for globalists in the deep state. Um, our country would be in a million times better position. And again, things wouldn't be perfect, but at least we'd be on a better path. Um,
Yes.
and the sovereign wealth fund, and then we'll jump to our last couple topics. We're almost out of time, but I think that is a brilliant idea. Our country is not supposed to be in endless debt. People
Yeah.
forget, in our past, we'd paid off the national debt due to wars or other things multiple times. Even following World War II, we made huge strides to pay off the national debt we accumulated from that war until we got involved in Korea. And there's charts of this. Kennedy, that was one of the main things in his presidency was he wanted to pay off that debt prior to us getting involved in Vietnam because, somebody might have killed the guy. And I don't think it was Lee Harvey Oswald, but we'll leave that discussion for another day. CIA. But anyway, um, yeah, let's go. Let's go to these last couple stories here real fast because we talked about this the other day that Germany is banning the movie Citizen Vigilante because, well, essentially it's too accurate. Movie Citizen Vigilante highlights mass migration frustrations and faces pushback. Elon Musk makes it free for the next 48 hours. So
Oh, I'm gonna
Germany,
watch that.
yes. So he tweeted it out yesterday, and basically, because this movie is like too on the nose for the people in Europe, it's essentially about Islamic rape gangs and criminal gangs, and the corrupt politicians and judges that let them continue to harm people there. It's literally they based the dialogue on this on German judges who were letting illegal aliens get away with homicides, rapes, and other criminal activity with no repercussions or giving them, slaps on the wrist saying, well, they were the real victim. It's a culture shock that they came here from Syria or wherever, and they just don't know how to comply in the West and, live within our rules. So this movie, I'm told it's a little cheesy at points, but it is very powerful, very on the nose. It is on the graphic side, parts of it. I started to watch it last night. I'm going to get through the rest of it tonight. But right now, if you go to Elon Musk's Twitter account, which you guys are all following anyway, go there and look through his post from yesterday. You'll see where he retweeted this from the production company. He worked out an agreement with them because Germany has already used a de facto ban. They were refusing to give the movie a rating, which means it can't be shown in theaters, can't be put on streaming services, and can't be the DVDs can't be sold in the country. And other countries are getting ready to do this throughout the EU. So Elon Musk decided, hey, you know what they don't have rules on right now is if I just post this on a social media account. So that's what he did. So right now it's free for the next 48 hours. It's already actually doing well in the box office here in the U.S. and in countries where it has been released.
Wow.
Again, this is a film everybody needs to see. And, Hollywood, this was a very low budget film compared to most of what you're making right now that's flopping. Maybe take a message from the director here, Ewa Cole, and do something like this that's a little more pertinent, that's reflects where the country and the world is right now instead of whitewashing everything.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I'm excited. I want to see the movie myself. I know there's been a lot that's come out about this. I think Glenn Beck is covering a lot of this too.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember the other name, Tommy. I know his name starts
Oh,
with a
Tommy
T.
Robinson.
Tommy Robinson, thank you. His stuff is really good too. I've been watching some of his interviews so I can understand what's taking place in the UK because I remember this was something Charlie Kirk was calling out years ago,
Yeah.
and telling us to be mindful here in the US as well. And knowing our history with, with Europe, and us having a similar ideals. My concern was the fact that you see the left going this radical way, and you see the same thing taking place in Europe, and
Mm.
we don't want to have this. So I think it's pivotal that we fight for what we have, because the more conservative we become with coming back to the ideals. Again, I have to come back to the ideals and what we really wanted I think what our founders wanted of this nation,
Yeah.
and then what the Revolutionary War fought for, and then we look at what the left is trying to do, the radical left, because
Yeah.
I don't believe that every single Democrat is out against. I do think that there are some that do love this nation, but you have the radical fringe, and even on the woke right, that also want the exact same thing. They're basically aligned in what their goals are for this nation. And I think this is something that we have to fight. We have to be aware of this, not to be in fear, but we need to be aware, so that way we can step up to those school boards, we can step up to the different to these to vote and be informed, well informed, and get involved, to make a difference in this nation and to fight for it.
Yeah. Well said. Um, Let me sneak this last story in here before we wrap things up, because this is a huge, huge deal, and it's something I don't think is getting the attention it deserves. Breaking: Dominion drops 2020 election lawsuit against Mike Lindell. This is a $1.3 billion lawsuit that this is the same thing they went after Fox News and Newsmax. And guess what, guys? It's coming out now from Dominion themselves, and we're going to see more of it from the FBI, it sounds like. There may have been some shadiness going around in the 2022 election. I guess they just don't have the ballots to account for the vote in Fulton County in Arizona or Michigan, which tells me there's probably other places this is true. Guess what? They also had to admit the machines were illegally connected to the internet. They were also using foreign tech support for elections, which are also illegal. And there's going to be a variety of other documents and things coming out soon. And hey, Fox News and Newsmax, maybe you need to file an appeal and get the money that you gave them, since you guys both surrendered to this lawsuit rather than fighting it. And maybe you can get your millions of dollars back, because it looks like they were lying. It looks like this was a false case to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Man, if the media would focus on actually reporting and versus these gotcha questions when it comes to Trump, I
Yeah,
think we would be, like you mentioned earlier, a lot better off, because they would actually be doing their job. They would think critically. They wouldn't be so biased, and they would
yeah,
actually go after the claims that we're talking about and prove them either right or wrong.
yeah,
But instead, we're having these things uncovered by independent journalists who are rising up, and it's just because they're not doing they're not doing their job. They'd rather be partisan and have a narrative that ultimately leads this nation to be divisive and violent
yeah.
than anything, than to just report the truth.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I do think that's by design, is they want the division. There's another kind of interesting story that's starting to come out. You saw yesterday that Congress may actually move forward with charges for Fauci. And
Oh, wow.
but Tulsi Gabbard, it's been almost a week since she released all these documents confirming what we all suspected during COVID: illicit activity that went on, essentially money laundering through NGOs, funding biolabs all over the world, and hard proof that he tried to cover this up and lied to Congress. But there was literally zero coverage of this at all for the last week for anything with Tulsi Gabbard and these documents that she released from as DNI on her way out the door. Not 1 minute from CBS, ABC, NBC, Miss Now, and other New York Times and other major media outlets. Fox News gave it some coverage, and then conservative media, Newsmax, OAN, Real America's Voice, and others obviously cover the story, but from the regular dinosaur media, not 1 second of coverage. Now all of a sudden they're having to cover that Fauci may end up getting charged with something, and I'm sure their audience is a little befuddled how this could just fall out of the sky like that. But, maybe if you reported things as they happen instead of literally trying to cover up to keep this narrative alive, then your audience, I mean, this is why you guys' audience is down so far, because most people in the middle, the normies even, they know, and sorry guys, I'm going to get the numbers a little bit wrong probably, but when 89% of the coverage of President Trump is negative and 87% of the coverage of Kamala Harris is positive during a presidential cycle, no
Yes,
person with
something's
two
wrong.
brain cells, to rub together knows that's reality. That it isn't that nine times out of 10, Trump's doing something evil, and nine times out of 10, Kamala Harris is a saint. No one believes that. Nobody, except for your mind-numb robot sponges that you've created by being propagandists rather than there to help America critically think, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, even when you look at the recent interview Donald Trump had with Kristen Welker,
Yeah,
and this didn't get much coverage, but I made sure I clipped it and did a video of it. But when Donald Trump asked her to provide him the list of Americans held in Iran, she wasn't able to give it. She said, "Oh, it hasn't been reported yet, but that's your job."
yeah,
Instead of again, we're watching a total interview where we're just focused on gotcha questions when there are actual Americans being held in Iran that you don't even know about because you haven't been doing your job.
yeah,
You've been so focused on this narrative and hate for Trump and these other things that we don't even have this side of the job, that the main part of the job that we're supposed to trust you with, and keeping this nation safe and revealing these type of things is not being done.
yeah,
And it's sad to see, but I'm glad that they're going down in ratings because I don't think we should be supporting a company that won't be honest with us, that'll just be
yeah.
biased when it comes to their reporting.
Yeah, and then, that's again my main complaint. I think if we were getting a more honest take on what's going on here and around the world, if media was more like just the news, even
Yeah.
where you're just putting the facts out and then letting the audience make up its opinion. And I know the left says that they have a right wing bias, and yeah, they do on some of their opinion shows. But if we were something close to that, I don't care if you have a panel interview and you bring on some left-wing blue-haired moonbat to argue with the Democrats' point on it, as long as you put up a real, conservative, not one of these fake Republicans, never Trumpers, or whoever, to articulate the point for conservatives, because they don't actually represent that. They don't represent where most of us are. Now, maybe there's an issue or two where they are accidentally aligned. Like I saw a bunch of people putting up this post from, I think it was Joe Walsh, this other, never Trumper, former Republican or whatever, that now all of a sudden he's scared after he saw what happened in New York and he thinks he gets it. Well, this guy should have got it several years ago. That's unfortunate. That's not the person that we want to have representing our viewpoint, somebody that's more aligned with the Democrats than they are the Republicans on any day of the week. But guys, media, if you want to get back to where you're financially viable and you're not on the chopping block like CNN is right now, then maybe you should do a better job accurately reflecting people's opinions on both sides and just reporting the facts and stop it with all your activism.
Yes, I 100% agree.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up, but one more time, where can people get your book?
Amazon, and it's 40% off until July 4th. So pick one up today. You'll be blessed
That,
by it.
That's right, guys. I'm going to tweet this out right after we get off air here. So if you want to link to it, just make sure you grab that. It'll be on my Twitter account. I'll push it out on the X American News account in a few minutes, too, if you're following that one. But again, Aisha, I want to thank you for joining me today. Any last words of wisdom you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up here?
I just want to encourage you all to be proud of your country, of our great nation. I want to encourage you all to, if you find faith in God, if you've never been to a church or have, I just pray that we get rededicated in those roots, because again, that's the standard by how we're doing this morally. It's in all of our documents that we have. The founding documents is carrying this. And so I just encourage you, as we head to America 250 to celebrate, that you just remember something impactful, whether it would be something that's not of happy memory about a historical event, but just understand that all of the historical events that we had up until this point has led us to this point, and has led us to a more freer, more prosperous nation where people can take refuge in. And with all of the stuff that's happening in the media right now, this is still the best nation on earth. So
Well said.
own that.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to go out there and represent, and don't be afraid to push back to all these haters out there that think, America is just a cesspool, and we're, don't be afraid to push back against the globalists. Be proud of America. Push our values forward. You know what? If people don't like it here, they can leave. They can leave with everybody else. We're about to mass
No, but
deport.
They won't, because it's the best nation.
Exactly. And they all know that. They do. Well, enough of them do. Every once in a while, you get one of these people that decides, like this guy a few months ago that went to Palestine, some gay guy, and he got some free flying lessons. Well, again, we've been warning you guys. These aren't the people you think they are for a long time, and sometimes you got to heed the warning.
Or like there
But
was a
again,
TikTok video of a Black woman who went to Russia. She said that she experienced way more better treatment there, and then ended up getting into a physical altercation, and then her face bashed in.
yeah,
So
good God,
it's not nice, but I'm just saying this is
no.
still the best nation on the planet.
Yeah, and again, I think these people that pretend somehow, we're this close to being a border to border concentration camp are absolutely delusional. Um, yeah, I just don't know. I don't know what to do about some of these people. But that's why we've got to address some of the other problems here at some point too. The colleges, our schools, our education system. It's all got to be
Yes.
fixed. Right now, it's just totally infiltrated, and these are indoctrination machines now, nothing more. But thank you for being here with me today. To our audience,
Thank you for
thank you for
having me.
joining us. Oh, you're welcome here anytime. Guys, please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to grow so we can bring more people the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. Have a great weekend, and I'll be back on Monday with even more. Thanks again.